I finished this stack of books ages ago and just haven't had a chance to tell you about them yet. These are all books published by small presses in the UK and Ireland, which is a little bit of a newish experience for me because most of my reading is from small presses in the US and Canada. But I had a very specific, very good reason for reading these books, all from the UK and Ireland. This year, something very specific tempted me into placing an order from Blackwell's and having some of these books, not all of them, but some of these books shipped overseas to me here in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States. If you are new here, welcome. I am obsessed with fiction published by small presses because that's where I believe the best, most exciting literature is being published these days. And so I come here on YouTube to talk about those small presses and those amazing books. And if you are not new here, then you know full well that I am obsessed with a literary prize called the Republic of Consciousness Prize. The Republic of Consciousness Prize supports, promotes, and celebrates small presses of fiction of the highest literary merits. The prize winnings from that prize don't just go to the author, they go to the publisher as well, because part of the goal of the prize is to encourage these small publishers to continue to take literary risks, which also often come with financial risks. But the Republic of Consciousness Prize is not just one prize. It's two prizes. The original prize was started in the UK for publishers in the UK and Ireland 10-ish years ago by prize founder Neil Griffiths. And that prize for the UK and Ireland was so exciting that about 4-ish years ago, Laurie Feathers founded a US and Canada version of the prize. So now there are two different prizes. There's the Republic of Consciousness Prize for the UK and Ireland, which is the original prize, and now there is a Republic of Consciousness Prize for the US and Canada. That's the prize long list that I've been reading for the last 3 years. I've read the full long list for the US and Canada for the last 3 years. The two prizes operate completely separately. They share a name, they share an inspiration, they share a goal to promote the work of these small publishers. Obviously, they're working with publishers on opposite sides of the Atlantic. They have different judges, they have different criteria, they have different structures. They're completely different prizes that share the same name. So it can get a little confusing. And in the spirit of clarifying any confusion, I thought I would make this video and talk about the fact that there are indeed two prizes, and then dip my toes in just a little bit into the UK and Ireland Republic of Consciousness Prize. So that's what these books are. These books are representatives of the Republic of Consciousness Prize for the UK and Ireland. Okay, I have to hide my bonus book. I have a bonus book there. This year's prize, there were 10 books on the long list. I bought 6 of those books from the long list, and I thought I was going to be able to make a vlog of me reading these books. Unfortunately, I read them and did not film myself or film my reactions or anything. I was just way too excited to get through them. So I filmed basically nothing, except for maybe a few little snippets here and there that I'll insert as we go along. I filmed basically nothing, so I'm here today to tell you a little bit about these amazing books. 4 of them were eventually shortlisted for the Republic of Consciousness Prize for the UK and Ireland. 2 of them were on the long list. I will link to the full long list. I wasn't able to order all 10 books from the UK. I actually only ordered 5 of these. One I actually bought over here in the US. So I wasn't able to order and read the full long list for the UK and Ireland prize, but I will link to the list of the full long list below so you can check it out if you'd like. Let's start with the book that won the prize. Let's just start right there, right off the bat. This is There's a Monster Behind the Door. It's by Gaëlle Bellem. It's translated by Karen Fleetwood and Laetitia Saint-Lubert. And this is published by Boulon Press, which is an Irish publisher. This was also longlisted for the International Booker this year. And just a little bit about the publisher. Boulan Press is a recent arrival on the Irish publishing scene. They have chosen literature in translation as their focus. It is the first such press of its kind in Ireland, is what they say. And they say that we inspire to open up a space for readers seeking new and different voices. This book is set in the 1980s on the island of Réunion. There are many monsters of various types behind many doors of various types in this novel. But the primary and perhaps most important monsters behind the door in this book are the parents of our young narrator. Our narrator is a smart, intelligent, precocious little girl who is terrorized by her parents on a daily basis. However, she finds her ways of getting revenge. She gets her revenge in various ways, but mostly she is obsessed with getting her revenge by finding a way to tell her own story. The pace is so unusual. I felt like there were several times where there were really important things happening that were just sped through. But then there were other events where so much time and detail was spent. So for example, the parents' wedding was like this wild party scene. It almost felt like a party scene from like a 1970s movie where there's like wild and wacky things going on in every corner of the party and like outside the party and just all over the place. It's just a wild party. So much time was spent on that, and then there were just other moments where you just sped right through something really important. So it is chaotic. The pace was chaotic, and that was intentional because I think it mirrors the narrator's life, which is itself very chaotic. The book is really all about a place and a time and a group of people. It is vivid, it is vibrant, it is offbeat, and it is very funny. It wasn't my favorite book on the long list, actually. It wasn't my favorite book on the short list, but I see why it won. I feel like there are a lot of really, really good reasons why this book won the prize. And I think I mentioned it was also longlisted for the International Booker Prize. So I see why this book won. And I think the most telling detail for me to share is that this author has another book being translated into English that's coming out from Boulan Press or just recently came out. And I fully plan on checking that book out. So I think that's the most telling detail for me to share, that this was such a vibrant depiction of this time and place and these people that I really want to see what else this writer is putting out. And let's give you a little glimpse of me having to go down to my storage unit during a storm to get this book out of a suitcase because I accidentally left it in a suitcase. Okay, let's move on to a book that was shortlisted and was a big favorite for a lot of readers. A lot of people who were reading and following along with the prize really loved this book. This is Invisible Dogs. It's published by CB Editions, and it's written by Charles Boyle, who is the founder and publisher of CB Editions. CB Editions publishes short fiction, poetry, translations, and other work which might otherwise fall through the cracks between the big publishers. I think this book was a big hit with a lot of readers because of the language is just really clever, just a lot of clever phrasing and clever observations. And it is written as the diary of a writer, so one would hope that the writing would stand out. This is the story of a writer who's traveling to an unnamed country. You're supposed to assume that this is rather authoritarian country that this writer is traveling to. He's on some sort of like cultural trip. He's been invited there for an extended period of time to like do readings and do tours of various facilities around the country, and he's there with another writer. He's staying with another writer who is assumed to be more successful than our narrator. He makes more money with his writing. All around, he's supposed to be seen as like more successful and more fun to be around, and just there's jealousy going on, is what I'm trying to say. Their itinerary is completely controlled by their translator, and they are like not allowed to go outside on their own, and they have this very controlled existence on this trip. And it starts to become rather overbearing. So they start to kind of rebel in various ways, and then strange things kind of start happening both externally, like on the streets, but then like internally for both of the writers, and it kind of descends into this kind of weird place. And one of the strangest things is that when they get there, they're told that the government has eliminated all dogs. There are no dogs. But the narrator keeps seeing dogs everywhere. And when he points this out and says, "I just saw a dog," the translator is like, no, you didn't. That's not possible because we've eliminated all dogs. But he keeps seeing them. I have a feeling that there are a lot of things in this book that like went way over my head. They're like allegories or analogies or just deeper meanings that I just didn't quite get. The language is just so fabulous that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is a fantastic and very short book. You could read this in a day if you wanted to. I refuse to read books in a day, so I actually took my time with this one, but you could read it very quickly. Okay, now let's talk about two books that were longlisted for the prize, but not actually shortlisted. They didn't quite make it to the shortlist. So first up, we have Daybook by Nathan Knapp. This is published by Splice. So this is an American author, actually. Nathan Knapp is an American author, but this is published in the UK. The author, Nathan Knapp, is very clear in all of his interviews that this is autofiction. It's like barely even autofiction. It's like autobiography, but it's a novel. So much of this is based on his childhood growing up in Oklahoma, and then his life with his wife and his child in Nashville. And there's no plot to speak of, really. This is not a plot. A lot of these books don't really have much of a plot, but this one really does not have much of a plot. It's really just this narrator figuring out a lot of stuff about himself, spiritually, emotionally, and most of all, sexually. There was a lot of beautiful writing in this book. I really enjoyed so much of the writing. There was also some writing that deeply confused me, and I felt like maybe I just wasn't getting it. For example, there was just some strange phrasing. So for example, instead of saying Nashville, which is where the narrator lives, he would say the city in the South where I live, instead of just saying Nashville. Or instead of saying Thanksgiving, he would write the holiday established after the burning of Atlanta, which was Thanksgiving. It's just Thanksgiving. And then instead of like referring back to a specific event that he had mentioned earlier, he wrote the event mentioned at the end of the paragraph above this one. It is really disorienting. Like, it is really, really disorienting. And I hated it while I was reading it. But I have to tell you something. I love to hate things. Hating that did not make me dislike this book. It just made me think. Like, why is he doing that? And thinking like, okay, maybe this is obnoxious, or maybe like I'm just not getting it. And I love to think about that kind of stuff. It just makes it way more fun to read a book. Truly. I just really appreciate that he was trying to do something that was like maybe a little strange, maybe didn't quite work. And that's okay, because he was trying to do something different, and I don't mind that. So I found it very disorienting and weird. That's okay with me, truly. Another weird, strange coincidence that just made my day. The narrator was reading The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann while writing this book, and was talking about, like, kept mentioning it over and over again, The Magic Mountain and stuff from that book. I was reading The Magic Mountain while I was also reading this book, and that was just really cool. Then we also have The Seers. This was published by Prototype in the UK, but published here in the US by Coffee House Press. I have the US version from Coffee House Press. This is the one of the books that I did not get from Blackwell's. I got it from my bookstore. This is by Suleiman Adonia, and Prototype, which is not this version, but Prototype, the publisher in the UK, publishes fiction, poetry, anthologies, and interdisciplinary projects. And they say that through the discovery of high-quality work across genres, Prototype strives to increase audiences for experimental writing as the home for writers and artists whose work requires a creative vision not offered by mainstream literary publishers. We're going on with a theme here of publishers who are kind of picking up these gems that just don't have a home in the bigger publishing scene. So this book was longlisted. I would have shortlisted this. I loved this book. It was pretty intense. It was also, like the previous book, about a narrator kind of discovering herself sexually, discovering parts about her sexuality that she didn't previously know, or awakening parts of herself. But it was a lot more than that. So it's narrated by Hannah, who is, I think, 18 years old. She's very young. She lives in London. I struggled to decide exactly when to mention that she is also a refugee from Eritrea. And the reason I struggle with when to mention that part of her identity is because one of the themes of this book is that as soon as Hannah became a refugee or an asylum seeker in London, that suddenly became all she was. That was the defining feature of her identity, according to everyone around her. She can't be a young woman discovering her sexuality. She can't be a young person interested in studying literature. She's not even allowed to go to school or have a job. She is an asylum seeker. Everyone, from the government to people on the street to the people who are close to her and care about her, they reduce her to that one thing, defined by the horrific things that she experienced in her past. And she refuses this. She absolutely refuses this, and it's freaking glorious. It is so intense. It is truly an intense read, but glorious. I really loved this book. Then we have Selina, and this is by Catherine Axelrod. It is translated by Philip Terry and is published by Les Fugitives. Les Fugitives was founded in 2015, and back then their sole purpose was to publish English translations from Francophone women writers. Since then, they have expanded, and so now they mostly publish women Francophone writers, but they also publish English originals and other voices from the Francophone world. This lovely book is based on the true life of a young girl named Selina, who was hired as a maid by Victor Hugo when he and his family were living in exile on the island of Guernsey. Am I saying that right? Guernsey? Victor Hugo was very famous for his extreme sexual appetite. Am I sensing a theme in this year's long list? I feel like there's a theme. 15-year-old Selina becomes the object of Hugo's desire in this novel. It is narrated by Selina, though, so it is her story. She is telling the story from her perspective. And the thing is, Selina's life has been filled with so much hardship and so much death and uncertainty. Her father died at sea, her family, they're all dying from tuberculosis. It's just been filled with such heartache that she sees the family home of the Hugos as paradise. It is, maybe not quite paradise, but it is just such a difference from the home she came from that that's where she wants to be. And it's really true to her beautiful young voice. I feel like it's giving her a voice, and it's really hard to reconcile, as a modern adult reader, kind of what is going on with Victor Hugo and Selina, with kind of her narration of it from like a child's perspective who is in a place that she wants to be. It's really interesting, complex, but very, very simply told. It's just beautiful, simple language from this young, very thoughtful, but young girl. And the ending is heartbreaking. It is very sad. But there is one little gem that I found that got me excited while reading this. There is a mention of one of the characters, it might be Selina, drinking coffee from a bowl. If you know anything about French culture, you know that in France, sometimes people drink coffee from bowls. The word bowl is used in the book. There is another book I read earlier this year that was translated by Lara Vergnaud, who also translated one of the other books on the shortlist this year, actually, for this prize. So she was translating another book called Tenderloin that I read last year. And she has this amazing article about the art of translation and how she was in this real conundrum when translating that book, because the main character in Tenderloin drinks coffee from a bowl. And she knew that English-speaking readers would come across that and say, why is he drinking coffee from a bowl? Which is a totally normal thing in France. But here we would be like, oh my gosh, did he break his cup? Like, what happened? And so she chose to translate bowl to cup because she knew the intention was not for the reader to stumble on that word. The intention was for the reader to just say, okay, he's drinking coffee. Philip Terry obviously made a different decision, and I just think that's really cool. It's just a really cool little, insight into the art of translation. So I will link to that article below because I think it's really cool if you're interested in translating as an art and a science. And I will now cut to an earlier version of me shopping for a French coffee bowl. One of my favorite little shops in Chicago is called Posh. It is so cute, and it's mostly like French dishes and goods and stuff, and it's gorgeous at Christmas time. They have so many beautiful ornaments. I walked there the other day because I just knew if anywhere in Chicago was going to have a French bowl for drinking coffee, it would be Posh. So indeed, I went to Posh, and we're going to unwrap these things together. They sell these little editions of poetry from New Directions. These tiny little. I have a couple here. Do I have them right here? I'll grab them some other time and show you. But yeah. So I mean, is there a more perfect shop for me? They sell New Directions books and French dishes. Okay. So not only do they sell these little bowls, but they sell versions that are modeled after the bowls that they used to have in cafes. So the different size bowls would have the number of francs on the side of the bowl. I should have gotten more than one, but this is like 2 francs 25. What would be centime? What's the cents in French? I don't remember, but that would be like an easy way for the servers in a cafe to charge you your bill instead of having like an actual bill. They would just go around and they could at a glance see like how much. It could either be like the size of the coffee or maybe like a cafe creme versus a cafe au lait or something like that. And then it came with a little saucer as well. So, and they had all these cute colors, but they were like low on stock. I'm gonna have to go back because the one I wanted was red, but they didn't have a matching saucer. So I have my little coffee bowl to match my little, oh look, oh my God. It's always a good thing when your reading inspires you to go shopping, right? I think so. Okay, so these are the tiny little New Directions little poetry collections that they sell, and I got these at Posh. They sell these this one is French love poems, but it has the French and English versions. So the original French and the English translation. And then they have love poems from Pablo Neruda. So yeah, it's a good shop. Finally, we've reached my favorite novel from the shortlist. I feel like a lot of people have read this now and are as enamored with it as I am, I hope. This is Mother Naked by Glenn James Brown, and this was published in the UK by Peninsula Press. Peninsula is one of the UK's boldest and liveliest publishers of boundary-pushing fiction and essay, and they say every book on our list is a commitment to challenging, subverting, or simply sidestepping received forms, formulas, and habits of thought. This was my favorite purely from the joy it brought me to read it. What a quirky, voice-driven novel this is. This is set in the city of Durham in 1434. A gathering of very powerful men are feasting in the town's cathedral during a horrible storm, when in from the rain comes an aging minstrel who has been hired to entertain them for the night. His name is Mother Naked, and he has come to tell them the legend of the Fell Wraith. The Fell Wraith was a terrifying creature who, decades earlier, legend has it, had slaughtered the entire population of a nearby town. But was it just a legend? Who really is Mother Naked, and why does he know so much about all the men sitting there at that feast? The coolest part about this book is it was inspired by a single entry, a true record of a single payment entered into Durham's cathedral rolls. The entry was Mother Naked, which I'll put in text on the screen, Mother Naked. Mother Naked was the lowest paid performer in over 200 years worth of records of this cathedral. So the author clearly found this and was like, why was Mother Naked paid so little? What was wrong with this person's performance? So that's what inspired this whole story. This is storytelling at its best. It is so fun, but it is got a lot of depth and nuance to it as well. It's about class, it's about poverty, it's about family, it's about entertainment and storytelling. It is so cool. I won't share another word more about it because it is best to hear this tale straight from the lips of Mother Naked himself. I have a bonus book. So those 6 books were all from the long list for this year's Republic of Consciousness Prize for the UK and Ireland. But I was shopping the other day at a bookstore and I saw this book, and I knew about this book because I knew it had won a couple years ago. I forget what year, but it had won the Republic of Consciousness Prize for the UK and Ireland. This is Lote. It's by Shola von Reinhold. It was published in the UK by Jacaranda Books. It was also published in the US by Duke University Press. And this is the US, obviously because I'm shopping in the US, this is the US version from Duke. But it was published in the UK by Jacaranda Books. So Jacaranda Books is an award-winning, diverse-owned, independent publisher and bookseller. They say we are dedicated to promoting and celebrating brilliant, diverse literature. And they say our ethos is simple. We are committed to publishing groundbreaking writing with a dedication to creating space on the bookshelf for diverse ideas and writers. So I mentioned earlier that Mother Naked was a brilliant voice-driven novel. And now that I think about it, every book on the long list that I read this year shared that feature. They are all narrated by brilliant, original, powerful voices. And those voices are what drive the story forward. And it's the voices that make each of those books such a unique experience to read. And Lote is no different. This is narrated by Matilda. This is also a very hard book to describe. It is brilliant. I know several of you out there have read this and love this book also. Funny and offbeat Matilda is our narrator. So Matilda herself seems to kind of float between several identities. She doesn't stay fixed in one place or home or job or name or anything. And when the book opens, she is volunteering at a museum to go through and like archive a bunch of historical photographs. So she's sorting through these historical photographs and comes across a photograph of a forgotten Black modernist poet named Hermia Druitt. There's a lot more to it than this, but Matilda basically becomes obsessed with Hermia, but there are basically little to no records of Hermia's life and like no records of her actual work. And so Matilda's search for Hermia leads her to discover this weird artist residency that is located in a mysterious town called Dunn. And the reason that this appeals to Matilda is because she knows that Hermia had lived in Dunn for a period of her life. So she applies to this artist residency, basically knowing nothing about it. She cons her way into this residency and is accepted. And so she shows up, partly because she wants to learn about Hermia, but partly because she has nowhere else to go. She's basically homeless and has no money, and the residency is going to give her a stipend. And it ends up being this wild, cult-like experience that is just impossible to just actually summarize. It's about art. It's about how identity is expressed through aesthetics. It is a lot about the erasure of Black art and Black artists and Black writing and Black writers. And it's about how there have been artistic geniuses across time, across human history. There have been these artistic geniuses that have been overlooked and erased from history because they didn't fit the canon. They didn't look like or sound like or dress like or act like anyone else in the accepted canon of art and literature. And so they were overlooked and erased. So this is another book that so much of it is so far over my head, but that is okay because it's still an amazing experience to read it. The reason that's okay is because the voice of Matilda is so strong and such a joy to read that it doesn't matter that I don't get everything that's going on. I'm there for Matilda. I'm there for the voice. And that is what is true for each and every one of these amazing books. For me, that's what makes an amazing book in general. That's why I love literature from small presses so much, is that so many of them are so voice driven. And I imagine that's probably why you're here too. If you're still sticking with me to the end, I bet that that's the kind of book you like to read as well. So thank you for joining me as I dip my toes into small presses from the UK and Ireland just a little bit. If these are the kind of books that you love to read, I hope you will subscribe and join me here because this is what I talk about. I talk about these amazing works of literature, all from independent and nonprofit presses. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Sarah, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.